Well, you should have laddered Puka Nacua yesterday, huh?
I have we sold people on it. I had people message me like, "Hey, thanks for the Puka thing," and massive regrets because we found out while we were on the show. I didn't have a chance to go bet it, and it won so easily. And almost like he almost hit all of his alts in the first half.
He finished with 106, but the 100 came so fast. It was crazy. And, I took a stand in the opposite direction. The good thing about it was I knew literally by the first drive that I lost. It didn't matter. Like I just knew. Like
first two plays we were talking about it afterwards. Targets
literally the first couple of plays. So I went, yeah, okay, well, that'll do it. That'll do it. It wasn't even a horrible DFS night. I think I mean, I lost, but it wasn't bad. But just as far as Puka went, I don't remember the last time I've seen that a guy not practice at all, do a walkthrough and then a limited practice after being out for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And then they're just like, all right, welcome back, pal. You're the number one. Anyway, hey, welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Tournament Strategy Show. If there's one show every week that you should be tuning into, of course, other than the Deeper Dive Live before lock on Sunday, everything culminates into one big 4-hour show. But if there's one that you should be listening to really get yourself ready, get in the right, headspace for something like this, understand what lineups look like, what grades out well, where the leverage is, what you should be getting away from, this right here is it. We'll use the Sims to guide us, some analysis as well, and we'll take it from there. I'm Dave Loughran. That's Greg Ehrenberg. What's up, brother?
Yeah. So yesterday, here's the funny thing about betting in DFS. It's been a great week for me between NBA bets and everything, basketball starting. But every day, it doesn't matter how much you win, you still feel like a loser, which that was yesterday with the Puka Nacua thing. I felt like, hey, we should have bet the Puka Nacua alts that we were talking about on the show. So really profitable day for me, but I still feel like I missed out. The day before, also, really profitable day, but I finished like 14th in the $15 on DraftKings. Or no, that was a $5 that night, I think, with an Emmanuel Quickly lineup that finished 15 points out of first. So it's been a very, very good week. And there's nothing about it that ever makes me feel good. So I have to win a Millie Maker this week, or else it's going to feel like another shit slate. A Millie or nothing.
You know the saying, Greg, perfect is the enemy of good. Remember that.
I mean, so is just being a dog shit.
Yeah, but I'm saying you're striving for perfection.
Yeah.
And you're not able to appreciate the good days. I had an incredible betting day yesterday with the Portfolio EV tool. I mean, outrageous. And the amount of time it takes to place bets is instantaneous. Like it's printing. It's straight printing right now, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, so we'll get into it though. We're talking DFS here. If you guys, oblige, we'll talk about some wild spots on this slate. I'm running the Sims right now. Jacob's got them run already. So let's go. Let's go. Humboldt says, good is the enemy of the best. Disagree. Clayton, please tell me Pollard is on the getaway from list. Well, he wasn't on Wednesday. Tom, I heard from Tom about that one. Like we always say, though, with Wednesday, we're like our data team, they're doing it for us, for you guys. Like they're literally getting a first run of projections up in order for us to be able to have content, and to get a first look. We know how much those projections are going to evolve and change throughout the week. So I saw Pollard at that number and went, yeah, that's just not, that's not happening, which is good though. It gives us something to talk about. Plus Tajay Spears is back at practice. He could be in there this week. They're big dogs, 11 and a half points. But yeah, there's a lot going on here, Greg, most notably the fact that all of these Miami players are very cheap. What are the first things on a slate like this? 13 games, by the way, and still a lot of questionables across the board that we're just waiting for. What's the first thing, first, second, third, most notable things that stand out to you before we even look at the Sims?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's the pricing on the Miami Dolphins now that we have Tua Tagovailoa back. And while the team has been terrible in his absence, there's no reason to really take anything away from those games. Like they've had the worst quarterbacks imaginable playing QB. That actually, what's really been ridiculous in hindsight is that with all of the injury issues and concussion problems that Tua has had, remember he had injury issues in college as well, that they didn't decide to get a competent backup this year. Like that could, if they missed the playoffs this year, not having a backup quarterback ruined their entire season. If they had like a Joe Flacco as a backup quarterback, they're sitting pretty good right now. And that's probably something that they should have been investing in
also, look at their schedule too. Look at their schedule without Tua. They win most of those games if they have a semi-competent quarterback. Imagine if they had Flacco. They're 5-2.
And I mean, you still look at them because there's been like the Jets have struggled, the Bengals have struggled, so they could still make the playoffs. There's still definitely a path for them, but they'd be in a much better situation if they were more shored up behind Tua at quarterback. But the other thing too that kind of stands out to me is not just that the price points are egregiously wrong on these players. We knew we were doing the single lineup sim show on Wednesday that there was going to be an uptick in ownership. It has come up, not nearly as much as I thought it was going to. Tyreek Hill is popular for sure at 25% projected ownership. I thought he was going to be over 30% owned. I thought Jalen Waddle was going to be over 20% owned. I thought Devon Achane was going to be over 20% owned. I thought Tua was going to be one of the chalkiest quarterbacks on the slate. Tyreek Hill is a piece of chalk. Nothing else, at least as of now, is all that popular for Miami, and that's what stands out to me the most. I really like attacking this spot if it's not going to pull ownership.
Me too. I think it's going. I'm having so much trouble thinking it's not going to pull ownership though, Greg. Like, okay, what would be the reasons? Let's kind of reverse engineer this. What would be the reasons this doesn't carry ownership?
Yeah, the primary reason is we have seen where there's a lot of sports like MLB, NBA, and with all of the new tools like Sims tools and all that, and how widely available ownership projections and player projections are, we usually see the top projected points per dollar players just be more popular in every sport. And that is the case to an extent for NFL, but there's still so much public money in NFL where you got these milli makers with like hundreds of thousands of entries, where some of these advanced tools, they're just not going to impact what the public is doing at all. So you see week in week, so much of ownership is dictated by who just played well the week prior. Derrick Henry is a big game, 20+% on the milli maker, even if he doesn't project all that well for that particular slate. We saw it Juju last week. I thought that he was going to be, not like I didn't think he was going to be unowned, but I didn't think he was going to be crazy popular or anything like that. He ended up being the most popular wide receiver on the entire slate because he had a big game the week before. So the reason that I think there could potentially not be big ownership to the Dolphins is just because people will look at recent games from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and go, no, these guys have sucked recently. I don't want to play them.
I don't think you're giving enough credit to the public. Like last week, one of my highest owned players was Juju, and that's because the Sims fed him to me. You don't think the general public at least has the wherewithal? And look, don't get me wrong. You know, people who watch this show are understandably more educated and more informed on like roster construction and all of that, especially when you're looking over Sims results and stuff. But don't you think even the random person would know, like that's playing DFS? Because most people would just bet. Like if you're playing DFS, you have some semblance of knowledge. Maybe not in 2015, 2016, but in 2024. You don't think they know that the return of Tua Tagovailoa is a monumental impact on the rest of these players? I don't think you're giving them enough credit. I think you're understating it.
So I think they know, but if people really, really knew, Tua would be double-digit owned. Waddle would be like 25% owned. Tyreek Hill is still going to be popular, but and we'll see what ends up happening on Sunday. At 7K, though, Tyreek Hill really should be like 40 or 50% owned.
Exactly. And I quite frankly, I think he will end up being close to that. Maybe not. Maybe no. You know what? Not 40, 50. Maybe not. Only because it's a 13-game slate. I do think he's going to be pretty damn popular, though. Yeah. I don't know how popular Tua and Waddle are going to be, or even Devon Achane, but I mean, we agree. Tyreek Hill, far and away the most popular player from the Dolphins, right?
Yeah. But like, if the field is actually only going to play 12% of Jalen Waddle at $5,400, that's crazy to me.
Definitely. against this Arizona pass defense. I mean, sure, they only allowed 15 points to Herbert, but they had Herbert threw for 300 plus yards with a ragtag group of pass catchers, right? Like it's still a good spot for sure. Einsteinium said definitely a good spot to get away from that stack and single entry. Yeah, I also think there might just be ways to get unique with that, like Achane and Hill without Tyreek or without Tua or without Waddle. I think there's probably ways to do it. Anyway.
Yeah, you don't have to. And I mean, because I don't know if you finished running the Sims, just get an idea of what's popping up, Lofty. And we could have Jacob pull it up soon as well. But yeah, there are some spots that I'm getting a lot of that I didn't expect to be getting a lot of.
I'm getting a ton of J.K. Dobbins, and I'm here for it. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's not one of the parts that was unexpected to me.
Yeah, right. I'll go. Well, it was the first thing I noticed. It's like, oh shit, dude, I got a lot of J.K. Dobbins. I have no problem going back to the well there. I suppose one of the guys you're referring to might be Bo Nix.
Yeah, Bo Nix. Not that it's like surprising necessarily, but more Joe Burrow than I expected. Veli at wide receiver, which I guess is just because of the Bo Nix exposure. But yeah, we'll get into it and we'll start looking at these lineups.
Let's make it happen. Hey, if you guys don't mind, take a single second this morning. Atone for your sins. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Help us feed the YouTube algorithm, as Jake said earlier. Yes, bow down before the YouTube overlords. I don't know how it works, why it works the way it does, but when you guys show us some love, comment down below, subscribe. It's free. So hit the thumbs up. It goes a long way for us. It helps us get this out there. Also, one more thing. Shout out to our friend in chat. Where is it? I just saw it and I lost it. That's no good.
Which one are you looking for?
The guy that won 7K with the tools in the mini-max yesterday. Where'd you go?
It was Rand Sizzles. Yeah, Rand Sizzles said, shout out to Stokastic. I won 7K last night in the mini-max. So shout out to Rand Sizzles, RANSIZZLES.
Hell yeah, man. Congrats. And if you ever wanted to use the tools, I mean, I said it a million times and you see it. Yeah, there he is, Rand. You see it in chat. You see it in the Hall of Fame. You see it up the top with the avatars and all of the contests. I've said it a million times, but there's literally never been a better time to check the tools out for essentially no cost to you. Like, you go into the description, look at the first link, join any sportsbook, get Stokastic Sims free. You literally click that and pick any of those that you want. Just click claim offer, whether it's Bet365, whether it's Caesars, BetMGM. If you're in a non-legal betting state, it could be Underdog, Prize Picks, doesn't matter. Better, all of them. You sign up, right? With that, you have to click that claim offer, deposit, make your minimum deposit, which in many cases is like 10, 5, whatever, bet. Once that bet settles, send us a screenshot at support@stokastic.com. Jacob, if you could throw that screen up, that'd be great for the page. And then once that bet settles, send your email with the screenshot. That's all you got to do of the settled bet and your welcome email so that we can verify it and you're in. $100 value entire month, core package with Sims, with single lineup Sims, better lineups right around the corner. Not to mention, you can stack it. Like, oh, I'd like to get 3 months of NBA and 3 months of NFL. Yeah, you could literally carry 3 straight months of multiple sports by clicking claim offer on 6 of those. Ultimately, like, think about it. Say you did 6 of them and minimum deposit was $10. I mean, I bet at 365, you're getting 200 in bonus bets anyway. FanDuel, you're getting 200 in bonus bets anyway. A lot of these are 100% first match deposit, but just say $60, not even including all of the bonus bets, which wipe that out times 5 anyway. That's $600 of core over the 3 months, 3 months of 2 different sports. You're just, I mean, it's the best offer we've ever had. So if you want to check that out, link down there in the description. Just as long as you click that claim offer, follow those 4 simple steps, you're in business, baby. And you could be like Rand Sizzles taking down the mini max for 7,500.
I was going to say, which you would say there. Just make sure you follow those steps right there, because we've had some people who sign up and they don't send the email and they're like, how come I didn't get the subscription? Then it's like, well, did you send the email? And that's the most common thing, is people just say don't. So when you go to the landing page, you don't have to remember it. It's right there. It's got the 4 steps. Just follow those 4 steps And then, like Lofty said, also, you'll see on screen what the actual offers are. It's not like you're just getting a free month. You're also getting up to $1,500 in bonus bets from BetMGM. All those different offers are right up there on screen. So you're getting a ton for what could be, like a $10 deposit on some of these sites.
Yep. And even if you just wanted our tools, you're still getting everything. Anyway, let's take a look at some of these top lineups and see what we're pulling. Let me see if I can get this bigger. If we could possibly zoom in there a little bit too. What's up, CG? Good to see you, brother. All right, there we go. And for what it's worth, Greg, sometimes the lineups that populate at the top, that sim the best, doesn't mean that that's going to be the heaviest exposure to those guys. It just means that we're getting exposure to those players right now at the top. But it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like you could see, I see it all the time. I remember Jalen Hurts last year. It was like 3 of my top 10 simmed lineups out of 150 were Jalen Hurts stacks. And then I only ended up having, I think, 5 Jalen Hurts stacks in the top 150. How does that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it might be also just that if a player is projected to be really, really low owned, which I don't know that that's the case with CJ Stroud, but I'll just use it as an example. Maybe CJ Stroud is only projected for 1% ownership, but there could just be a couple of CJ Stroud lineups that just are like astronomically well projected. And then what'll happen is because there's so few CJ Stroud lineups, the individual ones that end up doing really well in the sims, they'll just catapult to the top at times. But also often there will be situations where the top lineup might have like a 298 sim ROI, and then the fourth best lineup might be like 292, and there isn't really that much that differentiates them. This particular case, though, yeah, there are a couple of CJ Stroud triple stack lineups that are just way, way better projected than any of the other lineups that we have here by sim ROI, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's like a crazy amount of CJ Stroud triple stacks.
Right, exactly. And I look at some of these others. You've got Joe Burrow up there, Lamar. I am a little bit surprised to see the expensive quarterbacks. And that's like is that a Lamar +1? Okay, that makes sense. I assume Flowers? Is it Flowers? Yeah, it's Flowers. It's Flowers.
Okay. Yeah, I was having trouble reading the text. It's coming across pretty small.
We could probably just go full screen there too and expand it. No one needs to see our ugly faces, Greg.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is in there. Bo Nix. But so let's take a look at these Bo Nix lineups. Then we'll get into some exposures. I always kind of want to see, I think what's most valuable for you and me, hopefully for you guys in the audience as well. And if you, by the way, guys, if you ever have suggestions on how to better this show, like things you'd want to see, let us know. Sometimes in the showdown shows, people are like, hey, can you sort by dupes? Can we see the most duped lineups and all that stuff? Anytime you want to do that, if you have ideas and we think they're somewhat viable, let us know, because I have no problem incorporating that stuff into it. But anyway, so what I wanted to ask you though, Greg, was when you talk about some of these lineups up top, last week we saw a lot of 2 tight end. I mean, a lot. And currently, based on the lack of value outside of those wide receivers or pass catchers for Tampa Bay, we are seeing it again.
Yeah, it's not one of these slates where we're seeing a crazy amount of cheap guys open up. The good news, though, is that we have like the Dolphins situation where this is maybe the first slate of the year, or maybe there's another one that I just can't recall, Laffy. There's a ton of value in the mid-range, so there is value to be had. It's just not stars and scrubs sort of value.
Yeah, it's not stars and scrubs value, but I'm also a little bit, I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised that it's more going to 2 tight ends than it is going to the wide receivers for Tampa Bay. Like they're all, Jacob, can you go to projections for a second? Because when we did this earlier and when I had the projections call on Wednesday, go to the left. When I had the projections call on Wednesday, when we were going over these, you can filter by Tampa Bay, by TB on the left side where the filter, or you could do that too. Yeah. And that's easier. They were all up in like the 10 fantasy point range at a mid 3K price point. So I'm a little bit surprised that that's not the case.
Yeah, let's look at their projections. Just go team and then just put in TB for
I
Tampa
think the
Bay.
drop down isn't working for some reason.
Okay.
Am I right, Jacob? Yeah. All right. We could do this. Go to wide receiver, filter by wide receiver, and then just scroll. See, there you go. There you go.
I was gonna say if you press the 3 dots next to team.
This will work.
Yeah, that works.
Oh, so they're all a lot lower than they were before. Remember on Wednesday we did this? They were all on that 9.5, 10 fantasy point range.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what if I remember correctly, I think Trey Palmer was projected for 10.5 fantasy points and McMillan was 9.5 or something.
And so was Shepard.
Yeah. I don't remember Shepard's, but I remember Palmer and McMillan were definitely higher.
Yeah, I do remember Shepard's. He was actually a little bit above McMillan. What is Kate? Go to tight end. I assume that Cade Otton's up there for sure. I mean, he's got to be up there. You could just search his name. Cade Otton, yeah, 12.15. And then go to running backs here one time. Rashad White, 12. Bucky Irving, 9. Okay. So earlier in the week, we're getting to a lot of them. We're not now, Greg. And maybe that's fine. I mean, it's perfectly possible that it's fine. But that's just going to drive us to a lot more 2 tight end.
Yeah, and I mean, if we go back to our lineups, I just want to really quickly look at, we don't usually start with this, but just go to exposures and then tight end. Yeah, and then just sort by exposures. Oh, it's already sorted by exposures. So there's not that many double tight end lineups. There's some, but it looks like probably like 25% of our lineups have double tight ends. That's nothing too crazy.
Interesting. Because if you go to lineups, all of the top lineups are double tight end. Look.
Yeah.
Schultz
Otten, Disley Kelsey, Otten Disley, Otten Kelsey. Yeah, that's true. For whatever reason, the top sim ROI lineups are double tight end to get to that one down there where it's Javonte Williams in the flex spot. But the top 10 or so lineups are double tight ends. I think it's more of a coincidence than anything because, we looked before, like 20% of lineups or so that have double tight ends. It's a decent amount, but it's nothing that would make me think that our top 10 projected lineups by ROI would have 2 tight ends in them.
It speaks to what I was asking you about earlier, like where you actually don't have a ton of double tight ends, except the top simmed ROI lineups have double tight ends. So when you run these sims, they must have had, there must have been some big wins for some of these teams with the 2 tight ends.
Yeah, it's probably what it is.
Yeah.
That's definitely what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And then the ROI overall on that isn't great, but those builds had some wins. And okay, good to see. That helps us out. But at the same time, I'm really not opposed to doing something like that. Let's say no injury news breaks. Let's say all of the news breaks in favor of us against us getting value. So everyone that's questionable ends up playing. Then where is your value coming from outside of Tampa Bay this week? It's particularly Cade Otton, but at wide receiver, if you're not going to those Tampa Bay Bucks receivers, where's your value coming from?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think that the field is overlooking Jalen Waddle at $5,400. That's a reasonable price point for a guy who, with Tua, should be priced in like the mid to high 6K range. So it's not what we traditionally think of in terms of value, but this is an overlooked player who's way too cheap for a situation. Doesn't matter. Who cares that he sucked recently? He sucked because Tua is out and Tua is back this week. The only scenario where this would be concerning is if Tua's taken so many concussions that he just shows up. It's like, oh, this guy is washed. He can't process information as quickly as he could before, which there is a small chance of that happening, but it's not enough to deter me from playing a $5,400 Jalen Waddle at 12% ownership.
Jacob, we can go back to the 2-man here so we can go over to exposures and we should be good. As long as it's not those lineups, we're good. Let's hit on exposures and see what we've got. Go to quarterback first. That is a lot of Bo Nix. They're huge favorites, though, with a very high total against a abysmal New Orleans team. The only concern I have, Greg, is the fact that we're also getting – go to running back. How much Javonte are we getting?
Wait, go to the exposure stab, Jacob. You went to player ROI. Yeah. So at running back, we've got Javonte Williams, and 48% of lineups. I don't know. I know what you're getting at here. I don't know how many lineups I want where it's like Bo Nix and his stacking partner is Javonte Williams.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It isn't that Javonte can't get pass catching work, but how about this? On the season, Javonte Williams and Bo Nix have accounted for 85% of the team's red zone rushing attempts. 85%. I don't love that. Like, I like Nix. I love Javonte this week. I'm not in love with the unless you're just not even playing for the correlation and you're just playing for the smash 45-point game where nothing actually matters, right? But I'm not obsessed with the idea of playing both of those guys together. I'm okay with it in moderation. I don't want all of my Bo Nix lineups having Javonte Williams.
The other issue I have with Bo Nix stacks, I don't have an issue with Bo Nix naked lineups this week, especially because we were just talking about there isn't that much cheap value available. He's fairly cheap at QB. He's in a good spot. He has a lot of rushing upside. We've seen good games from Bo Nix where he throws, like, what's the least amount of pass attempts he's had in a game this year? All right, Bo Nix.
What, like 25 maybe?
I think probably even less than that. Never mind. You're right. 25.
Oh, look at that. Right on the money.
Right on the money. Do you know the most passing yards he's had in any game this year?
250?
Yeah, 246. So he has had 0 games of 250 plus passing yards. And that's actually his only game with 220 or more passing yards. That's just going to make it really, really hard to see a path to upside for double stack Bo Nix lineups. Because could he have the best game of his career to this point? Sure. But I'm kind of light on the fact that a guy halfway through his rookie season hasn't thrown for 250 yards is all of a sudden going to be throwing for big yards and sporting multiple wide receivers in his stacks. So if you want to go a single stack with Bo Nix, I'm okay with that. If you want to go naked Bo Nix, I'm also okay with that. But I really find it hard to justify like Bo Nix double stacks.
I'm not a huge fan of Bo Nix double stacks either, because he also has the rushing upside. Like, he's proving that he has a lot of rushing upside, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And he's going up against the terrible Carolina team. Carolina has not allowed any rushing production to quarterbacks this year, but a lot of that just has to do with who they've faced, right? Like, they faced Jaden Daniels, and he had a 47-yard run on the first drive, and then he got hurt. They faced guys like Kirk Cousins, who's never going to run. Derek Carr's never going to run. A lot of the guys they face just aren't really mobile quarterbacks. Also, you don't really need to run against Carolina. So that's the other thing that I'm not huge on, and why I actually like Javonte Williams more than Bo Nix this week. But if I'm playing Bo Nix, and I would assume what's Javonte's ownership? It's got to be crazy. If you just go to running back again, we'll see. It's got to be high. 20% is not that high. I thought it would be a lot higher than that.
Yeah, we've got him at 20%. The real chalk at running back, which makes sense. I thought this was going to be the case when you and I were doing the show Wednesday. But Breece Hall is in such a good spot against the New England Patriots. And his price tag isn't that absurd because the Jets' offense hasn't been all that great. And also, they've struggled to run the football. The Jets have looked good once this entire season. It was another matchup against the New England Patriots. And now is the game where I had people message me like, oh, you said Aaron Rodgers might not be good this year. Look, he's clearly an MVP candidate because he played well against the Patriots. and then he sucked every other game. It's like the Patriots, it's the Coors Field of DFS this year. Like, people are just going to do well against the Patriots. It's going to be hard to get away from Breece Hall. Even him showing up in 3/4 of lineups, I think that's like pretty reasonable.
I think he's so overowned.
It's just they're going to be in such a good spot against the Patriots. It's also an ideal spot to be running the football. Another thing too, I don't know how much you've noticed. They've kind of gotten away from Braylon Allen. He looked great earlier in the year. Yeah, that's just not been a thing recently. It's all Breece Hall now.
Yeah, no doubt. it's not Breece Hall himself. It's not the matchup. It's first of all, the Jets have just been dismal. Maybe they figure it out. They did. I mean, the one complete game they've played this year was against the Patriots a handful of weeks ago. But still, I mean, okay, so what's their total in this game? They have a 24.5 point implied total, right? Actually, heavy juice on the under. Let's say 24 points. The Houston Texans have a 25.5 point total, juice to the over. Joe Mixon's essentially the same price, getting a third of the ownership. Like, that's kind of wild to me. The Kansas City Chiefs, I don't know what their total is, but it's got to be like 27 or so. Okay, 25.5. So let's say, here it is, 26.5 on Pinnacle. Kareem Hunt's $6,300. He's coming off 52 total touches in his last 2 games. Obviously, I think Breece Hall's a better play than Kareem Hunt. But, almost 50% ownership to Breece Hall on a 13-game slate? Seems like a lot.
It's a lot, but I mean, there's a breaking point where I wouldn't want to be playing more than the field. I could say with like a pretty high degree of certainty, though, that I'm going to be overweight to the field on Breece Hall.
Yeah, and I understand that it's a great spot, but still, God, that's a lot. Like, I'm surprised he's getting more than Dobbins, that much more than Javonte, that much more than Mixon, that much more than Hunt. I really thought that we would see not flat exposure by any stretch, right? Like, I would have thought a lot of these guys would have just been grouped more closely together. Because let's not ignore it. Yeah, they're 7-point road favorites, and Braylon Allen isn't getting a lot of work. J.K. Dobbins is a 7-point home favorite, right? He's had 73% of running back carries since Gus Edwards went down. Sorry, 75. Javonte Williams is a 9.5 point favorite. He went nuts last week. Mixon's volume was insane last week. He's a 5-6 point favorite. Kareem Hunt's a 10-point favorite on the road, much like this Jets team. Not nearly as good a pass catcher as Breece Hall, so that plays into it. I just thought with some of these really high totals for these teams that it would be closer, but it's not.
The other point, too, with Breece Hall, which you touched on there as well, but the pass game work has been ridiculous for him. He has at least 4 targets in every single game this year. Last week, he had 9 targets, ended up catching 6 of them for 103 yards. Overall, for the season, he's been targeted 43 times. He's got 32 catches for 307 yards. So you got a guy in Breece Hall who's averaging, something like 7 targets per game, 6.5 targets per game. It's a crazy amount of work in the passing game, in addition to the fact that he's likely going to be in a spot that should set up well for him to score touchdowns.
Yeah. Look, again, there's nothing I disagree with on why he's a good play. It's that I'm surprised that so many of these other guys are so much less owned than Breece Hall. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Like, if Mixon really comes in at 15, 16, 17% against the Colts at home, 6-point favorite, I mean, I would like some of that. Although, yeah, you have Dara
100 rushing yards in every game he's played to completion this year.
Say that again?
I said Mixon does have over 100 rushing yards in every game that he's played to completion.
Does he really?
Yeah, the only time he fell short was the game where he got hurt against the Bears, where he hurt his ankle.
Damn. Also, while he's not a prolific pass catcher, the fact that he has 3+ targets in every game, and he actually is a good pass catcher. He's not elite, but he's good. That's not bad. The guy's averaging 20 receiving yards and 2.5 receptions per game on top of those yardage totals. He's been really good. Isn't it funny to see how well he's played compared to Cincinnati, where you couldn't get him more than 3 yards per attempt?
Yeah, he was miserable in Cincinnati. I know for a long time too. I'm just going off memory, but Cincinnati had really bad offensive lines.
Big time.
That was the meme too. Remember when they were drafting Jamar Chase, there was the meme of Joe Burrow throwing the ball downfield and the wide receiver dropping it. But then the alternative was him throwing the ball to Jamar Chase, who was open, and Joe Burrow was getting sacked. And it was like, which situation Would you prefer to happen here? So that definitely ties into some of Joe Mixon's inefficiencies in Cincinnati. And you see this all the time with running backs. And it's why running backs just don't have as much value as other positions. If there's an NFL caliber running back who has a great offensive line, they're going to have success running the football. It's just an inevitability. But on the flip side, too, if there's a dog shit offensive line, it doesn't matter who the running back is. It's impossible to get anything going. And
Look at
you've got Joe
Saquon
Mixon
Barkley
playing behind a good offensive line now.
Yeah. Look at Barkley.
Yeah.
Look at you don't need, the crazy thing is you don't even have to be a great running back as long as you have a great offensive line. Miles Sanders going from Philly to Carolina. Guy got benched 7 weeks into the season after a, great year with Philly. It's crazy, man. But yeah, I'm with you. Okay. So here's what I'll say right now. All of the guys that are popping up top, I like all of them. Dobbins, Hall, Javonte, Mixon, Hunt. The only thing that to me, it's like, wow, 73% Breece Hall, which means I'm not getting much of these other guys. Look, if I had to dump those lineups into my contest, I wouldn't be complaining that I have a ton of Breece Hall. I'd just like to get a little bit more Mixon and maybe Kareem Hunt, but definitely Mixon. If you scroll down, is there anybody else that stands out as like, hey, I wouldn't mind getting a bit? I mean, DeAndre Swift is an interesting one. He's getting a lot of work. No one else that really jumps off the page at me.
Yeah, by the way, the upper and the lower disappeared there. Jacob, I don't know where it went. There we go. Now it's back. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys here that are viable that you kind of mentioned, but it's guys like, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, Bijan Robinson. His price has come up against Tampa Bay, but he's seen more workload as of late compared to earlier in the year. It's players who I wouldn't mind having in a couple of lineups here or there, but I'm not going to prioritize them over the players that were getting a double-digit amount of lineups in, like Kareem Hunt, like Joe Mixon, like Breece Hall. So these other guys, they're in play, but it's not the same as some of the other guys. Also, because people brought it up at the top of the show, Tony Pollard not really showing up in lineups. Now that we have Tajay Spears, likely looks like he's trending towards playing, totally makes Tony Pollard not look interesting.
Bug Boy, it's pure negligence to not mention a $6,600 Josh Jacobs in this conversation. Not really. I mean, you may feel that way, which is perfectly reasonable. This is America. But no, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't have. We have what, 2% exposure to Josh Jacobs? Who would you prioritize Josh Jacobs? By the way, the Jacksonville defense, you're not going to see me telling you that they're good, but they have been way better against the run than they have against the pass. It hasn't even been particularly close. Like, they've been gutted in the passing game. On the ground, they've been fine. So it's not actually, this isn't just like a free-for-all type matchup as it would be for the Panthers or something. They're allowing 3.7 yards per attempt to running backs this season. It really has been, and also they do cough up a lot of receiving yards to running backs. If you wanted to go with that, Jacksonville has been gutted by pass catching running backs, and Josh Jacobs is pretty good in that respect. He's fine in that respect. At least he gets some work, but they've been crushed in the passing game. If you want to go to Jacobs, fine. I don't have an issue with it. They are 3.5-point road favorites, although all of the money and tickets are coming in on Green Bay, yet somehow the line is still moving against them. Same thing happened with Minnesota and the Rams yesterday. You saw the result. Who would you put Jacobs ahead of in that 6 and 7K range, though? Because I'd have him like 8th, honestly.
Another big problem with Josh Jacobs, who, by the way, I didn't even know this was a thing until it was a narrative last week. He hadn't scored a receiving touchdown his entire career until last year. I don't even know how that's possible for a guy
crazy, right?
Who's like actually been decent throughout his career and has gotten work in the passing game. But one thing about Josh Jacobs that is definitely a concern, he's not getting the touches on like the 1-2 yard line. He's only scored one rushing touchdown the entire season. I hate how much value touchdowns have in DFS. It's one of my least favorite things, just where you could have the guys like the old like Garrett Blunt games where it's, hey, look, he had 6 carries for 4 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, you need to have him. But that's also a reality that we play within, and it's just not all that likely that Josh Jacobs scores touchdowns. He's got 1 rushing touchdown the entire year. Also, his volume hasn't really been there. He's rushed for over 85 yards once this year. So you've got a guy who is not rushing for a lot of yards, nor is he rushing for many touchdowns. He's been okay efficiency-wise, 4.5 yards per carry, but it's a guy who's probably getting sub 20 carries and probably isn't getting touches inside the 5-yard line and being the guy who scores touchdowns.
Pretty much. Yeah. And to be fair, he's getting all of the red zone opportunities. He's just done nothing with them. He has 16 red zone carries on the season. Emmanuel Wilson has 4. Those are the only guys. He has 6 goal line attempts, only 1 touch. He just hasn't been able to do anything with them.
Yeah, and it's been an issue. I do think that also they have so many wide receivers to feed on the Packers that, and there's no way to know this for sure, but it just kind of like an intuition of mine. Jordan Love has thrown for 15 touchdown passes through 5 games so far this year. I think their preference to try to keep all the pass catchers healthy is once they're inside the red zone is to try to throw for the touchdowns, where even if there's a guy who maybe isn't getting his 7-8 targets in a game, at least they could get high value targets in the red zone. I mean, that kind of would make the touchdown differential between Jordan Love's passing touchdowns and Josh Jacobs make sense to me.
I'm not even opposed to a Josh Jacobs. The problem becomes who are you playing Jacobs ahead of?
Yeah. I'd rather play Hunt, rather play Mixon, rather play Hall, rather play Dobbins, rather play Javonte Williams. And just get to a point where it's like you can't build lineups with 7 running backs.
That is wild. Bug Boy said that he has shorter 2+ touchdown odds than Mixon this week. Josh Jacobs at plus 360 to score 2 touchdowns is, I don't even care if he does it. It's a horrible bet.
I would bet he only has 1 rushing touchdown the entire year. I would bet the other side of it if there was one, but there isn't.
Nah, of course there isn't. Plus 310 on Caesars. Jeez, dude. That's wild. That's crazy. Okay. Give me the Javonte 2+ touchdowns. Yeah.
By the way, Jacobs is a plus 600, scored 2 touchdowns on FanDuel.
On FanDuel? Yeah, that's so if you're going to bet it, that's where you should be betting it for sure. Take a look at wide receivers.
Yeah, that's also okay. So that's just a bad line for Caesars. Just to bring that back up, Josh Jacobs on FanDuel is plus, like I said, plus over 600 to score 2 touchdowns. Mixon's plus 260 to score 2 touchdowns on FanDuel.
Yeah, and FanDuel's clearly sharper than. I'm not saying they're the sharpest book out there. Usually they have great odds as well for touchdowns. I mean, but yeah, no, dude. I don't know. You do it that as you want, but wide receivers. Ladd, wow. Some Ladd, Tyreek. Okay, so we still are getting to a lot of Tyreek Hill this week right now. So it's Khalif Raymond that's why we're not getting any of those Tampa guys. It's the Khalif Raymond exposure this week, Greg. And Deshaun Vele at 3,400 himself. I guess that actually makes a little bit of sense.
I mean, like, these are very low-owned players, by the way. Like Khalif Raymond pulling 2% ownership, Vele pulling 7% ownership. It's like a little bit there. I mean, you can make a case for him if it's paired to line up with Bo Nix, especially because we talked about the lack of passing volume for Bo Nix. It's a little bit less of a concern when Vele is only $3,400 because he could score 10, 11 points and be in a winning lineup. I can't say that I'm particularly comfortable with having around 20% of each of these guys, though.
Neither am I. JB, the deception Puka was mad looking at the beginning of the stream. What do you mean? Oh, okay. Yeah, it was. I got you. Yeah, it was wild. DFS temp. Did we get Coach Speak Index on Dan Campbell saying Allan Robinson would be heavily involved? Man, I don't know what. I don't know. I can say that I would be heavily opposed to having my day depend on whether or not Allan Robinson does well. Like this guy, no matter where he's been in recent seasons, has done nothing. He has been another thing. Okay, you want to get him heavily involved. That's nice. So then please explain to me. I understand these aren't all the same archetype of wide receivers, Greg, but then please explain why Tim Patrick is averaging 40, 50% of snaps every week. Khalif Raymond's playing snaps every week. And that Allan Robinson's all season. Like now it's time for Allan Robinson to be heavily involved because Jamison Williams went out and you still have two other. No, I'm not buying that he'll be heavily involved. Crucify me if he is, but no, there's no way I can buy that narrative when the guy's played 10 snaps in 6 games.
The last time Allan Robinson had 100 receiving yards in a game, the NFL played 16 game seasons.
Yeah.
It's not just that Allan Robinson hasn't been involved so far this year. It's also that Allan Robinson has been maybe a thing on many slates, many seasons for a lot of years now. And there was a point where Allan Robinson was very, very good. The problem, though, is that was a very, very long time ago, where we're looking at 5 years ago since Allan Robinson was relevant. And the drop-off was insanely, insanely fast for Allan Robinson. Where in 2020, he had a 1,200-yard season. Then in 2021, he only had 400 yards. He went to the Rams in the offseason. There was this thought of like, hey, look, he's back with a good quarterback in Matthew Stafford. There's weapons around him. It's a good offense. It's going to be a bounce-back season for Allan Robinson. It didn't happen because he was washed at that point. He used to be really, really good. He's been in the league for a long time now. He's 31 years old, which doesn't seem crazy old, but it kind of is for an NFL player. This is his 10th or 11th year in the league. He came in at a really young age, and he just hasn't been good in a really, really long time. So even if he plays more than he has, which is not a high bar to clear, he's basically not played at all. I don't see any reason we would expect him to do anything. I don't even know how many years or how long it's been since he had 50 yards in a game.
I remember when he went to the Rams because Matthew Stafford was actually trying to target him a lot early on. Like, I remember because I was betting his anytime touchdowns because he literally led the league in end zone targets through the first 4 or so weeks. And then it was just they gave up. You know what it reminds me of? In Cincinnati with Andy Dalton and what was his name? Who was, God, how am I not remembering?
TJ Houshmandzadeh?
No.
I'm just throwing old Bengals wide receiver names out.
Oh my God, he's so good too. What was his name? Like 6-7 years ago, he was so good. He was with Andy Dalton. This is bad. I think my memory is going on me. I'm waiting for chat. Probably already threw it in there. Green, right?
Chad Ochocinco?
No, Green.
Oh, okay,
Green.
all right.
Yeah, I got it by myself. It finally came to me.
I was thinking too far back.
Yes. AJ Green was, when he wasn't injured, was phenomenal. Him and Andy Dalton had an amazing rapport. And then one year, like the precipitous drop-off season where he just fell off the cliff, Andy Dalton for the first month and a half would target him every single time, 10, 11, 12 times a game until eventually it was like, you know what? It's time to move on. So that's what happens. And I think that's Robinson just coming out of the woodwork to have a great game after playing 10 snaps all year would be wild. More wild than Puka Nacua getting one limited practice in 7 weeks and ended up being the 100+ yard receiver that week. So
AJ Green was still in the league 2 years ago, by the way.
Who?
AJ Green was still in the league 2 years ago, that Cardinals stint.
Yep. But I'm pretty sure it was like 5 or so years ago that was his last season. What was his last season with Cincinnati? Had to have been like 5 years ago.
2020.
Okay, so 4 years ago. Yeah, that's when it just went downhill quick. Anyway, Ladd I think is fine. I want to pay attention to the Quentin Johnston stuff. Tyreek Hill, Khalif Raymond, Vele, Jamar. I'm a little bit surprised to see Jamar be our most exposed high-end wide receiver this week.
Yeah, so Jamar Chase at $8,500, only pulling 6% ownership. I remember we were having a good amount of Joe Burrow at quarterback, so it makes sense for the stacking correlation there. T. Higgins also showing up in lineups. T. Higgins has been great this year as well. So is Joe Burrow. The offense for Cincinnati is insanely good. The defense is just the inverse of that, and they've been terrible and just gotten gouged in some of these games. The good thing, though, for the offense is the defense has been so bad. The offense kind of has to score points, and they're on the field a ton because the defense gives up touchdowns so quick. And now it's also a game where they're going up against the Eagles, and the Eagles have a great offense. So you would expect the Bengals are going to be on the field a ton. If we're not considering Tyreek Hill a spend-up option because he's only $7K, which is not typically the Tyreek Hill price, I don't have any issue with the guy over $7K, us getting the most exposure to being Jamar Chase in this spot. I just don't see any way the Bengals are not throwing the ball a ton.
Tell you what, though, Quinyon Mitchell's a dog. That rookie corner for the Eagles, he's a dog. Keep an eye on this fella. Keep an eye on this fella. He is really good. Yeah, and Cooper, the other white boy. How about the resurgence of white cornerbacks this year?
Didn't we go a stretch where it was like 20 years without a white cornerback being drafted in the first round or something?
Yeah, I mean, or even like being a competent starter. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a few. The Eagles have actually had, relied on some of these guys, but Cooper DeJean, Riley Moss, they're coming back.
Yeah, Cooper DeJean was the first white cornerback drafted in the first round in 20 years. But he was a second-round pick, wasn't he?
I thought so. He was projected to go in the first, and I thought he fell to the early second.
You know what it is? He's the first starting cornerback first starting white cornerback in 20 years. But yeah, so I'm looking at an article that said that he will be the first round cornerback, white one drafted in 20 years, but he ended up going in the second round.
Yeah, he was expected to be. But yeah, Jason Sehorn, exactly. Sehorn. Diggs, Waddle. There's Waddle, 14%, but still not crazy. There's Palmer, AJ Brown, Tim Patrick, Drake London. Who are we not getting to? I'm looking. Are there any guys that we're just not? Do we have any Cedric Tillman?
After he scored that garbage time touchdown for the Saints.
Dude, Cedric Tillman's I'd be shocked. Let me see this. Where do we have Cedric Tillman at?
Oh, I thought you said Cedric Wilson.
No. Cedric Tillman. Do we have any, Jacob? No. Okay, so I'm a little bit surprised by that. You've got Jameis Winston, gunslinger out there. You've got a Baltimore team that's allowed, I say this all the time because it keeps getting worse, 34 pass completions of 20-plus yards this year. Jameis is just going to chuck it. And Cedric Tillman was out there getting all of the deep attempts. Granted, they went through a carousel of 3 quarterbacks last week. But Cedric Tillman was highly, highly involved. Jerry Jeudy hardly involved at all. Elijah Moore, we know who he is. I'm not saying Tillman's great, but he's $3,300. They're probably going to have to throw a lot. Wilson is not afraid to chuck the football. Shouldn't he be in the same neighborhood, the same conversation as the Khalif Raymonds and those other guys, the Deshaun Vele's? I think he absolutely should be this week.
I'd say the one difference here is that well, a couple of things. First, Khalif Raymond is a better quarterback throwing the football. That's something that plays a factor. Vele doesn't, but we're getting so much of Bo Nix where it makes sense from a correlation standpoint. But I hear what you're saying. Like if we were just talking about it in a vacuum and not considering our QB exposures, then I would put Vele in kind of the same sort of category as Tillman, and those guys would group together. I'd still prefer Khalif Raymond though. Jameson Williams, what an idiot! This guy, it's like every half year he has to do something. He's the walking bets of the NFL. Like, can you just get out of your own way? You got something good going for you. You're super. You've got given talents. Just go take advantage of them. Don't go bet on games. Don't go like failing steroid. Don't get in trouble off the field. Yep. Just go play football. And James Williams would be totally fun, but he just can't do that.
Given talents, you said? Who gave him the talents?
He's fast. He was born with speed. Go run. Don't even think about it. You touch the football, you get your screen pass, you run as fast as you can downfield, and you're going to be okay. Thinking is not his friend.
Clearly not. Guess what Jameis Jameis has the highest pass attempt prop of any player in the league, or any player on the week.
For like
pass attempts.
pass attempts.
Yeah. 35.5.
It's pretty
Let's
high.
see where his completions prop is.
15.5.
20.5.
What's his interception prop? It's probably gonna be 1.5, right?
Oh yeah, I would think 1.5. Still juice to the under.
Yeah. But usually the interception props are 0.5. You don't very often see a 1.5, but I think Winston could warrant like a 1.5 that's like minus 220 towards the under or something.
So the few books that like Pinnacle has at a half, but minus 217 to the over.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. Anyway, I'm just throwing it out there. I think Tillman does warrant some consideration. If you've got somebody like you have 35.5 prop for passing attempts is a lot. The only other one that has the same number is Geno Smith, and he leads the league in pass attempts this year. And they're the most pass heavy offense in the league.
Yeah. Geno Smith, if I'll pull up his numbers here, I think Geno Smith has had something crazy like 45 pass attempts or something in almost every game.
Which is wild. People had questions on DeAndre Hopkins. Any interest there?
By the way, it's 40 plus pass attempts in all but 2 games this year for Geno Smith.
Crazy.
And he had a game with 34 pass attempts against the Dolphins, but that was a blowout. But yeah, like crazy pass attempts for him. So DeAndre Hopkins, I need more information here. Based on what we've heard out of Andy Reid, it seems like Hopkins is heading for a big role. I'm just not sure if he's going to be unrestricted this week. At $4,900, though, if he's not owned, maybe this is me overreacting to the Puka thing from last night. But yeah, a $4,900 DeAndre Hopkins, who Andy Reid has alluded to playing the Rashee Rice role going forward. Yeah, I'm interested in that for GPPs.
I'm fine with it. 4,900.
Yeah. I would like a little bit more information, though.
I'm still uninterested in stacking Mahomes, but I have no problem with Hopkins.
Also, just because Swoop said in the chat, if you play Juju, you might as well play Diop. It's not exactly the same, though, because we had seen Juju play the Rashee Rice role the week before and had like 7 catches for 130 yards. And then he got hurt on like the very first play of the game. It's Hopkins' first game with the new team. And also, Juju was with the Chiefs in the past as well, so he's familiar with the offense. I don't compare the Hopkins situation to Juju. Going forward, Hopkins is going to project better than Juju ever would have projected. Just the question becomes is he going to play a significant role in his first game with the team when he was just traded there in the middle of the week? It remains to be seen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if there were no concerns about limitations, then of course you'd go $4,900 Hopkins is a smash. But I'd still like to get some exposure to him. What was his ownership, Jacob? Can you just, not our exposure, but just type him in one more time.
Because I know we weren't 0.7. It's like 1%.
Right. So he'll be higher on. There's no doubt. Okay. Do you want to talk about the public? You want to actually talk about public perception? This is a spot the public's going to want to get to.
What was Cooper's ownership last week?
Amari? I don't know, low, but he was also a lot more expensive.
It was 5,800 last week. A little like so expensive, but it wasn't like he was like Cooper's going to be 7K plus soon.
Yeah, probably. What's he this week? 6K? I think.
What's Amari Cooper? I'll check. I don't know off the top of my head.
It doesn't matter. I think he's around 6K. But Hopkins at 4,900, I think, is going to draw some eyeballs. That's all I'm saying for the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. Let's take a look at tight end before we go. One more thing, Greg. So today's what? The 25th? So 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. That's still 5 full days of NBA for a total of $1. So that's 20 cents a day for NBA through the next 5 days.
Promo code TIPOFF 24. The link's down below in the YouTube description box. So if you guys click on that link, you don't have to worry about entering that promo code. That's the easiest way to do is just click on that link in the YouTube description box. If you're looking to play NBA DFS, just $1 for a core package through October 29th. Also, any package you sign up here comes with access to Discord. So make sure to join our Discord channel. Hang out, say hi, ask questions if you have any. I think one mistake people make is they might look at our tools, not understand something, and then just be like, I don't really know how this works. Watch tutorial videos, go into Discord, ask questions, because we've got a bunch of guys in there. Myself, Steve Buzzard, the devs, other guys on our content team are in and out of there. And there's always somebody available to answer any questions you have. So sign up and join the Discord channel. It comes with every package.
Did you see, it's crazy, dude. Did you see Foul DFS took down 100K on Wednesday with the avatar, with the tools? Incredible.
I did see. And he signed up for the $1. Didn't he? Oh, no, he had signed up for baseball and then signed up for basketball on the $1 deal.
The amount of comments on tweets and things in Discord that I've seen of people going, I used the $1 promo and just won a tournament. Best investment ever. The amount of them that I've seen over the first 3 days of the season is blown my mind. So link down there, $1, or just like we said, use any of those sportsbook signups. Of course, you got to be 21 years or older to gamble. And if you have a gambling problem, you should call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But whether you want to do the $1 or you just want to say, screw it, like give me a full month. That's another way to do it as well. Anyway, all of the tools down there for $1. Don't worry about the promo code. Click the link. It preloads it for you. You're in business for the next 5 days, 20 cents a day. All right, tight ends. And then we say goodbye for the day. Cade Otton, a ton of him. Will Dissly. This is just a full-out punt week outside of, a little bit of Travis Kelce and Evan Ingram and those guys. But look at that exposure going to Otton and Dissly.
Yeah, and I mean, the Otton one makes sense because Otton's already been a viable fantasy tight end. And now in the same week, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out of the picture. Also match up against the Falcons, so it's likely to be fairly high scoring. Baker Mayfield has been great this year. He's made a couple of boneheaded plays, so his interception rate has been high. He's had some turnovers. But Baker Mayfield's been really good at quarterback this year, and his efficiency is going to have to drop off considering the state of the pass catchers for that team. But Cade Otton, Trey Palmer, McMillan, somebody's going to catch passes for the Buccaneers. Cade Otton's just the most sensible one because of how weak tight end is.
He's a good play. Yeah, the price point of 35, he's way underpriced. Will Dissly is coming off a game where he was targeted a ton, but also a game where Arizona just did everything they could to take the run game away. Maybe the Saints try and do that to J.K. Dobbins, but you would have thought they would have attempted to do that against Javonte Williams and company last week, given that Bo Nix isn't special, and they still got gashed for 225 rushing yards. So I think with Dissly's fine. I just like the higher passing environment for a guy like Cade Otton. That to me looks good. Also, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit more Sam Laporta. I thought Ben made a great point on Tuesday, just like, hey, Jameson Williams is out. What happened last year when Jameson Williams wasn't really involved? Laporta was second on the team with a 21% target share, had some really great games. Probably the cheapest you're going to get him. I think Laporta looks decent this week. Wouldn't mind getting a little bit more of him. His props are really low, though. 34.5 receiving yards.
It just hasn't been a great year for him. And I think there's a couple of things involved. Perhaps he was maybe a little bit overrated after a strong rookie season. Like maybe that's something that plays into it. There's also been so many weapons on Detroit where it's hard for any one guy to consistently get workload. Like even just out of the backfield, they've got Montgomery and Gibbs, then the pass catchers. They've had Amon-Ra St. Brown to feed. They've got Jameson Williams. Maybe with Williams out of the picture, you would say Laporta gets more targets now. But the problem is that Jameson hasn't been heavily involved in the pass game as far as volume goes. He's just like the big play home run sort of guy. So you'll see games from Jameson where he's been like 3 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. So him being out, yeah, it probably benefits Laporta a little bit, but it doesn't create like an immense amount of additional targets.
For sure. Look, I'm not saying I want a ton of it at all. The one guy I would rather have, I'd rather have Brock Bowers over Travis Kelce. That's the only thing I'll say. I like Bowers again this week, and Kansas City's been terrible against opposing tight ends. But anyway, that pretty much wraps it up. There's our Sims run. Things can change throughout the week. We'll have more practice reports after today. Some really important ones for sure. Anything else before we head out of here?
Yeah, we just got a super chat. Read that before we go. It would just be funny if you read it.
Nick the Picker. Hey, Greg, call me back when you're done.
Yeah, I saw you call
Hey,
that.
Nick.
It'll be done here in a second, Nick.
All right. Well, we will see you guys soon. Have a great rest of the day. Appreciate you hanging out. Don't forget NBA Deeper Dive live before lock, post lock show over on Playback, totally free, amazing platform, and the post lock show.
Yep.
With Eitan Shander and some special guests tonight after that. So if you're hanging out for DFS content this evening, no better place to be than right here on the Stokastic YouTube channel. And then over there on Playback as well. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.